last episode, we posed the question, if Tsai Ing-wen's degree is legitimate, then why does the government have to lie and cover up facts? That theme proved to be a popular one, so we will continue along with that theme. We will present our viewers with facts and let them decide what the true nature of Tsai Ing-wen's thesis is. First, let's take a look at the statement the University of London published on February 3rd, 2022. Before the University of London released this statement, the school remained non-committal about Tsai's thesis for 2 years. Back then, the Tsai administration insisted that LSE was the only authority that could vouch for Tsai's degree, so the University of London stood aside quietly. However, when faced with pressure from investigators, LSE provided fake documents about who Tsai's examiners were and when her viva date was. The investigators managed to debunk the documents quickly, proving that LSE presented bogus evidence. In a last-ditch effort to avoid legal consequences, LSE admitted that it did not have Tsai's viva report. This changed everything. Upon learning that LSE did not have Tsai's viva report, people flooded the school with Freedom of Information Act inquiries, asking why the school vouched for Tsai on its website on October 8, 2019, when it did not have the requisite records to support its statement. Unfortunately for the University of London, it became part of this scandal when it decided to improperly give Tsai a reissued diploma in 2015. LSE indicated in its website statement that the University of London was the degree awarding body at the time, but the University of London never openly supported or backed that statement. LSE forced the University of London's hand when it declared that it did not have Tsai's viva report. Its previous endorsement of Tsai's degree became meaningless, so the University of London had to step in. In 2022, the school released a statement. In regards to Tsai's thesis, the statement says, "It remains unclear whether copies were deposited with the university's library. The school has made no effort to address what happened to Tsai's thesis, only that it remains unclear." However, back in 2019, thesis investigators already uncovered how the University of London altered records to cover for Tsai. It's unfortunate that the University of London has decided to side with Tsai. Investigators initially hoped that the school would stand on the side of academic integrity. Now we will expose the myriad lies that Tsai and the University of London have doled out in the lead up to this statement's release. Let's go back to September 9th, 2019, a time when ThesisGate was just getting off the ground. Former Mainland Affairs Council head Xing-wen, during an interview, vouched for Tsai's degree as Tsai's former roommate. Lai thoroughly described how she interacted with Tsai in the dormitory, how they helped each other with homework, and how Tsai once gifted her a typewriter. Lai talked about how Tsai prepared for her viva after she submitted her thesis. For a few months in 1983, Tsai came to live with me. After that, she had submitted her thesis and awaited her viva. During that time, Tsai even helped one of my tutors at LSE, Caroline Thomas. Thomas was an international relations PhD candidate. Tsai helped Caroline compose her thesis with her electronic typewriter. That way, Thomas's thesis would look better and much neater. That was student life. Everyone helped each other. Later on, Caroline became a professor at Southampton University. It's hard to believe that Lai's vivid account was just a fabrication. In fact, this story did help Tsai's cause, winning over many would-be thesis skeptics. After all, Tsai's roommate came out to vouch for her. However, later on, investigators found out that Tsai was back in Taiwan teaching at Soochow University by September 1983. Tsai's own entry records show that she entered the country in June 1983. So, how realistic is Lai's story really? Lai's story was initially a ruse to cover up the fact that Tsai had actually returned to Taiwan in the middle of 1983. Lai's interview story was just a story conjured up by national security organizations to assist in this cover-up. Lai later on added that if Tsai did not have a degree, then she could never have gotten her teaching job at Soochow University in the 1980s. Again, if Tsai's degree is real, then why is it necessary to find people to dish out lies about its origin? On September 22, 2019, one day before the presidential office's press conference addressing Tsai Ing-wen's degree, former Grand Justice Liu Tae-zhen published an open letter vouching for Tsai. The letter described how Tsai got hired at NCCU in 1984. Liu said in his letter that in 1984 he was NCCU's law department head. He said that he met with Tsai and she brought her thesis, Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard Actions, to the meeting. He agreed to hire Tsai shortly afterward. If Liu's letter is to be believed, then Liu is the only person in the world to see a legitimate copy of Tsai Ing-wen's thesis and diploma, because Tsai herself may not even know what those things look like. Lai Xinyuan vouched for Tsai as her former roommate. Liu was vouching for Tsai as former Grand Justice. This was a major win for Tsai. However, it didn't take long for investigators to expose that the letter was a litany of lies. First, government records indicate that Liu was not NCCU's law department head in June 1984. That was someone else. Information like that can be easily accessed, so Liu's claim that he agreed to hire Tsai in accordance with school rules turned out to be completely bogus. Second, Tsai used a photocopy of her diploma to respond to a government document from August 10, 1984. So it seems that Tsai lost her diploma during her meeting with Liu. Otherwise, how could her diploma disappear so soon after the meeting? Was this to establish Liu as the only person to ever see Tsai's diploma? Third, on an employment form from September 28, 1984, Tsai Ing-wen wrote down that her thesis was titled Law of Subsidies, Dumping, and Market Safeguards. Liu's letter clearly said that Tsai brought her thesis, Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard Actions, to meet with him. So between June and September, Tsai's thesis magically switched titles. If Tsai can't remember the correct title for her thesis, then how are we to believe Liu's memory 35 years ago? Again, this letter was just an orchestration by national security authorities. We must once again ask, if Tsai's degree is real, then why do people need to lie on her behalf? As soon as Lai and Liu came out with their statements, the media ate their stories up. Unfortunately, news outlets immediately lost interest the moment investigators debunked those stories. If the prior described endorsements of Tsai's thesis were products of quid pro quo transactions, then they don't have much bearing in a democratic society. However, in 2019, Taiwan's democracy suffered a blow when a bureaucrat was dragged into this cover-up. That bureaucrat was Zhu Junzang, head of the Education Ministry's Higher Education Department. First, the Education Ministry held a press conference on July 19, 2019, in an effort to legitimize Tsai's degree. In that conference, Zhu pulled out a picture of the black leather thesis Tsai's people faxed to LSE Women's Library on June 28, 2019. Zhu said that the black leather book was Tsai's thesis. Zhu told the media, the Education Ministry has asked Taiwan's representative office in the UK to follow up with LSE about the president's thesis. The school says that it has it, and the representative office has sent people to photograph the thesis and its contents, with the permission of the author. At the same time, Zhu classified Tsai Ing-wen's teaching career files in a move to hide information.
跟委员报告因为教审资料在部里面的档案资料保存，我们都是用密件，超过30年，30年保密时间到，其实我们是在续予保密，所以我们针对送审资料都持续保密当中。
Zhu endorsed Tsai's thesis, and while people weren't looking, he classified her career files. He thought he could get away with anything after that. However, he already turned heads when he tried to convince the public that a 2019 thesis could stand in for one from 1984. On March 3, 2021, the Education Ministry's lawyer said that the ministry did not classify any files during an administrative action case Professor He brought against education officials. When the judge asked the Education Ministry's lawyer whether the black leather thesis was indeed Tsai's thesis from 1984, they dodged the question by saying the contents of the black leather thesis were included in NCCU's law review as well as discussed at academic conferences. The Education Ministry bamboozled the judge by saying the thesis was included in a law review. However, the Education Ministry shot itself in the foot when on June 3, 2021, it submitted a telling piece of evidence. On September 28, 1983, Tsai Ing-wen indicated on her own employment records that her thesis was titled Law of Subsidies, Dumping, and Market Safeguards. This one piece of evidence debunked everything that the Education Ministry said prior. In July 2019, Zhu endorsed Tsai's black leather thesis and pretended there was no other information that could verify Tsai's thesis. He went so far as to claim that the pictures of Tsai's thesis taken at LSE's library was the best he had. But in reality, not only did Zhu know about Tsai's employment form, he deliberately classified it. Zhu already knew that Tsai's thesis was titled Law of Subsidies, Dumping, and Market Safeguards by the time the July 19, 2019 press conference rolled around. He knew it wasn't titled Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard Actions like he had claimed before. There's a reason why he wasn't being truthful then. Who says an at-power administration always tells the truth? If Tsai's thesis could stand up to testing, then why did the Education Ministry need to keep her employment files hidden? Of course, people in Taiwan aren't the only ones wrapped up in this scandal. LSE and the University of London have been helping Taiwan's first female president play cover-up since 2019. The investigation team did not apply maximum pressure to the schools in London because it didn't know what kind of roles the schools played. Investigators simply hoped that a school with a legacy as honored as the University of London would act with integrity. However, as ThesisGate UK tribunal court cases played out, the University of London in 2022 released a statement siding with Tsai. Using the same logic we've drawn upon throughout this program, we must ask, if the University of London did in fact award Tsai with a proper PhD, then why did the schools have to lie on multiple occasions? The first lie came on June 14, 2019, when LSE Media Relations Director Daniel O'Connor emailed Dr. Huan Si-lin. The email emphasized that both LSE and the University of London had ample records on Tsai Ing-wen's degree conferment in 1984. It also said that both the Senate House Library and IALS had records indicating that they received Tsai's thesis. This email established the premise for the schools to say that they somehow lost Tsai's thesis. O'Connor wouldn't have said what he did had it not been authorized by the University of London. In a final effort to convince people that Tsai's thesis existed in 1984, O'Connor then said that the Senate House and IALS libraries must have received Tsai's thesis, otherwise the British Library's database entry for the work would not exist. Receiving O'Connor's email out of the blue is what prompted Dr. Lin to follow up with the British Library and ask about its database entry for Tsai's thesis. Lin found out that the library created the entry in June 2015 because someone pointed out back then that it could not be found. O'Connor's email had the opposite of its intended effect. Who was the one dishing out the lies? Furthermore, why was LSE lying at all to begin with? Interestingly, O'Connor's email is the only piece of evidence that Tsai Ing-wen's lawyer accepted at trial. The second lie LSE told came on October 21st, 2019. LSE Information and Records Manager Rachel McGuire divulged that Tsai's Viva took place on October 16, 1983, when responding to a Freedom of Information Act inquiry Michael Richardson launched. This was a mistake on the wrongdoers' part. For now, we'll ignore the fact that that date is a Sunday. McGuire also told Richardson that the University of London was the institution that kept records on Tsai's examiners and her Viva outcome. However, when Richardson then forwarded his inquiries to the University of London, the school concealed that information behind privacy concerns. There is nothing private about a PhD candidate's examiners' names. The University of London could not accept that a Viva occurred on a Sunday, so at the end of 2021, Tsai's lawyer Lien Yuanlong suddenly said that Tsai's Viva date was on October 17, 1983, and not October 16th. However, by this point we knew that neither LSE nor the University of London had Tsai's Viva report, so no one can really say for sure when her Viva was without those files. The third lie LSE told comes from LSE legal team head Kevin Haynes' response to Judge Zhou Yuxuan's evidence request. Haynes said that Tsai's Viva examiners were Michael John Elliott and Leonard H. Lee. Here's the problem. One of those examiners is a public and constitutional law expert. The other is a criminal law expert. Neither had expertise in Tsai Ing-wen's field of study, which was international trade law. Furthermore, both Elliott and Lee were LSE employees, so they couldn't have been external examiners. Neither of those people could qualify as Tsai's external examiners. So, of course, the University of London could not back LSE's claim. Why would Kevin Haynes come out of nowhere claiming Elliott and Lee were Tsai's examiners? The answer is in Tsai's employment files. In 1990, Tsai indicated that they were her instructors, so it's clear that LSE and University of London coordinated with national security organizations to straighten out Tsai's story. In order to lend this lie some semblance of believability, Lien Yuanlong said that Tsai recalled that she had a third examiner, economist Richard Dale. This is highly unlikely. The fourth lie schools in London told came from University of London Information Compliance Manager Kit Good. He provided the ICO with false statements that factored into the ICO's June 11, 2020 ruling, which heavily favored Tsai. The 35th point of this ruling said that the University of London had Tsai's Viva report and information on her thesis's publication. The 37th point said that the University of London told the ICO it had records that Tsai passed her Viva and that the school correctly conferred a degree onto her. The 44th point said that examiners' names would not appear on a student record, and the 49th point said that the school lost or misplaced Tsai's thesis sometime between 1980 and the 2010s. Today, we know that all of the above statements are lies. The University of London's new information compliance manager, Susie Merriweather, already attested to that on whatdotheyknow.com. She said that the University of London keeps minimal information on PhD graduates who graduated from LSE when it was still a member institution of the University of London. She said comprehensive information should be at LSE. Meanwhile, LSE has said that it does not have Tsai's Viva report. On November 2nd, 2021, another UK tribunal court case ruled that Tsai's thesis was indeed lost or misplaced. The ruling made from faulty information resulted in an unreasonable loss for Michael Richardson. It also put ThesisGate investigators in a disadvantageous position. Over the past 2 years, both LSE and the University of London have told several lies. They're working with Taiwan's national security organizations to cover up the truth. If Tsai's degree is real, why did schools in London have to lie? When LSE finally admitted that it did not have information on Tsai's examiners, the presidential office spent 3 days changing their narrative. Lien Yuanlong went from saying that LSE was the one authority that could speak on Tsai's degree to saying the University of London was the sole authority. However, in early 2022, the University of London also said it did not have information on Tsai's Viva, so the presidential office had no choice but to hide and stay quiet. However, this silence did not mean that national security agencies did nothing. On February 3rd, 2022, a University of London statement on missing thesis appeared on the school's website. In similar fashion to LSE, this statement did not indicate the department that published it. It did not indicate the time it was written, and it was placed in an obscure part of the University of London website. Furthermore, this statement was published at 3 a.m. London time. After so many questionable and suspicious explanations, investigators are not easily persuaded by official-looking statements. However, official-looking statements are one trick that the wrongdoers love to recycle. If we look at the section of the website where the statement was published, it's a place where the University of London goes to apologize for unsavory events, for example, data leaks. Ironically, this statement may very well become something the school will have to apologize for in the future. Also, the statement was uncharacteristically short, as if the school was trying to say as little as possible. First, the University of London statement, which addresses Tsai's missing thesis, says the university categorically denies any allegations of wrongdoing or falsehood made against any member of staff in relation to the search for copies of this thesis. This is to remove the school from any legal liability. Second, the statement said that Tsai had 2 examiners, not 3. National security organizations plan to use this statement as a way to remove Elliot from the examiner discussion and have him merely act as Tsai's supervisor in their fabricated story. Richard Dale and Leonard H. Lee will be solidified as Tsai's 2 external examiners. This will rectify Kevin Haynes' mistake. Third, the statement also serves to upend any reference to the fact that school libraries never received Tsai's thesis. This is to buy Tsai's team time so that they can find the actual thesis in the future. However, the University of London must have clearly realized during the 6-week internal investigation it conducted in December 2019 that the school indeed never received a copy of Tsai's thesis. However, this statement gives the University of London wiggle room to maneuver in the future. It all plays out like a bad joke. The school's lies are beginning to accumulate and snowball. Aletheia University professor Wu Jingqing said it best when he said, "The most crucial ThesisGate evidence lies in the past, not the present or the future." The University of London's statement, made this month, has no bearing on this scandal's outcome. It only digs the wrongdoers into a deeper hole. Since the University of London has decided to make its statement, it's clear that the school has no intention to reflect on its wrongs. It's siding with Tsai and, in the process, creating false evidence to cover for her. Professor He Defen, Dr. Huan Xilin, and Dr. Dennis Pang held a press conference on February 9, 2022, rebutting the University of London and formally launched legal action against the school. Let the bullets fly, for the more chaos ThesisGate generates, the more attention it will garner.